Hello all, welcome to study 47 of the Solving Studies to Improve Chess Calculation series. This position is a special one because the study was composed by me. It was inspired in a game I played in the Live Chess 45 League, the classical league online. And I got into an endgame position that I found very interesting, and from there, decided to study that endgame. And after a while, recently thought about composing a study. The position is not the same, but it's inspired on that game I played there. I hope you enjoyed. This is going to be probably a deep study, a deep analysis, like in a crime investigation. We are going into many details. Uh, I hope you don't find it too heavy, and I hope you really enjoy it. I also will share the full analysis on the description. So if you want to go deeper, also you can find it on the description links. And so, as always, if you are prepared, then you can move on. Otherwise, I suggest you watch the guide so you know how to extract the best possible way to practice this one. And if you are ready, the countdown will start and you can start solving. And I meet you again with the solution, of course. And here we are, and as always, let's start with the right move, which is to take the rook. Of course, exchanging the rook is the clever idea, and I think most of us have done that. There are another interesting position over here that comes when we attack the rook and the rook takes our rook. Of course, this is not the best also for black. The best for black is to go back, then, for example, we attack the pawn, but instead of black protecting the pawn, it goes to the open defile. So at the moment, black has the most active rook. Even if we take, well, then black comes attacking the bishop and the pawn. So if the bishop moves, we simply grab one pawn. Of course, white can also try to grab another pawn, but the position of white is too passive, and as you can see, it's white that it's fighting for a draw. So not a good position here for white, and if we are trying to win, f3 is not a good move. In the final part of the analysis of this study, I will show you what happens when the rook takes and we take back, because I think also it's interesting. It's different ways to approach the same, more or less similar positions, but not now. Now we are going ahead with the main line. So the rook takes the rook. The If black takes back with the f pawn, this is just a mistake. We simply can grab the pawns and make a party after it. So it's an easy win for white over here. So of course, the best continuation, the best defensive continuation is to take back with the h pawn, checking our king. Our king now has two possibilities, either go passive or active. As you know, by now, I think one of the key elements when playing an endgame is to keep the initiative and activate our king. So I think it's obvious. We will go king h4. The idea of going back with g2 just allows black to set up a very easy defensive fortress, because let's say, for example, we go over here, and now the key situation is how to defend this pawn. It's the weakness that black has at the moment, and as you can see, if white tries to reach, well, suddenly we are not going to be able to put away this king, and without white being able to approach and really attacking the weakness black has, there's no progression, and so not much with the passive move. So we go active, and the idea is we are going to attack the weakness, the e6 pawn. And of course, black can't waste any tempo to protect it, so needs to bring the king. So we continue our plan. Of course, here I don't want to go in front of my bishop, so I want to keep the bishop attacking the pawn. There are strong motives over here. I will explain. So now black comes here, and we approach, and black also defends the pawn. And so now it's the key moment. It's white to play, and what can it do to force the win? And yes, it's a brilliant sacrifice. This is the key for the solution of the study. And of course, now it's black to play. It can take back, and now suddenly we play this interesting b6 move, because as you can see, the king only has one square to keep protecting the pawn. So it would need to move the bishop, but now suddenly we place black in zigzag, because the bishop can't go anywhere and the king can't leave the pawn. So either move black chooses, it's going to be a loss. Let's see just one. Let's see, for example, if it comes to c6, so to take the b pawn back, then we just take the pawn. We take the pawn back, we grab another pawn, then the king comes close. So now the key situation of the position, it's almost ending, but notice that we need always to be precise, and the key feature at the moment is Of course, we don't have the bishop, so we need to rely on our pawns, and we need to grab the g pawn to make it stronger, the 3 pawns stronger than the bishop. So we can't allow us to lose the pawn. Of course, here, if we take, it's just a simple mistake because the bishop takes back the pawn. But if I also don't grab the pawn, then I have this situation where the king will reach this simple position. Notice that if now I attack, it's going to be over here. And now I can't force anymore because there is still this pawn. And if I go try to grab him again, well, then the king comes back. And if I take it, then now we are facing just a draw. So over here, we also need to find a final move to finish the study, which is e6. This is the only way to force black not to be able to approach the pawn. Of course, if the king approaches now directly with e6, we simply advance and we are guaranteeing the promotion, so black can't fall for that easy. So needs to come to c7, and now yes, we take the pawn, and with 3 pawns it's a guaranteed win, the technique against a solitary bishop. I will just show you one line over here so we can see the technique in action just for the pedagogic purpose. So black tries to control the advanced pawn, we protect the pawn. Now it's time for black to block it with own king, and now the idea is we are going to advance our pawns to light squares. We are going to place them in light squares. The more advanced they can go, the better for us in the first phase. So to place black without space and near a zugzang position. Let's see that in action. So now we advance g pawn. Black brings the bishop. We keep advancing our pawns. Keeps shuffling the bishop around. So we advance g pawn now. Again, advances. Black needs to waste tempo with the bishop, waiting. Now 1 pawn is already in the advanced light square. So here we are threatening to promote the pawn, so forcing black to come with the king to control it. And now we simply advance our king. So now we are threatening to advance 1 pawn and then advance the other. Notice that here black can't take the pawn because that will be really fast to promote. We just go with one and then there's no way black can avoid promotion. So our pawn is untouchable. That's the beauty of having advancing the other pawns. And that's why we need 3, and with 2 it's impossible because we really need to place black defending every time. So here black can try, for example, checking our king. We simply go to e5, now brings the king to attack our g pawn, and now we advance the f pawn, and we have the first phase finish. The other part of the technique, now because black is locked to control the 3 pawns, we are going to place our king in a more aggressive position, in more attacking position. Use the king in the end game, don't forget. And so we are going to maneuver the king to d7 before the next moves. And so let's do that. So again, black needs to be passive, and so we move our king. Again, black can't take the pawn. Just for example, if we go over here, then the 2 pawns, as they are to advance, they beat the bishop easily. Like for example, offering one and then promoting the other. There's no way black can take the pawn. So the king or the bishop needs to move, and now we reach our aim. We are now ready to make the final moves. Let's see, for example, the bishop comes back, and now we have this interesting technique of sacrificing 1 pawn so we can promote the others. In this situation, we need to sacrifice 2, but it's enough because we will promote the third. So I recommend always to start with the closest to the king, but we can use also the farther away. But let's go with e7. I prefer this one. This forces the bishop to take back, of course. And now I advance the g pawn. now forcing the king to take it. Now I take the bishop, and as you can see, it's going to be an easy win if I promote to a queen. So this is the first important main line of the study. We went too deep. We even saw this technique of the 3 pawns beating the bishop. Let's come back a bit. Let's now move a bit over here, and so let's see another moment that we went very fast. Uh, Notice that here there is there are other possibilities. So when I sacrifice the bishop, as you can see, it's a win for white because I will place black in zugzag. But black may try something like moves, surprise moves like this one, bishop e5. We should always pay attention to surprise moves. Here, this only doesn't work because we will keep our b pawn in the end. That's why this doesn't work. So we take the bishop, black takes our bishop, and now we are going to use our b pawn as a bait, forcing the black to go take it, and then we grab all the remaining pawns on the king side. So, like for example, over here, and now it's an easy win for white. So this trick doesn't work, but always pay attention because these surprise moves can make a difference. There is other interesting move over here that it's bishop c7, and now we are kind of in a struggle to find a plan if we don't really have patience. So the idea is black is going to defend with one less pawn. And because we only have one weakness at the moment, it's going to be hard for white to force it. We need to be smart. And the idea is going to be simple. We need to bring our bishop to the other side of the board to help the king force the position into a win. And let's start with bringing our bishop. Now, of course, black is not going to easy things for us, so it's going to check our king, forcing the king to a more uncomfortable situation, going to f7, and now attacks the pawn again. So this kind of looks that white can't progress, and we need to keep going on. So we are forced to protect with our bishop, of course. Now there are two possible ways for black to continue, but going to the 8 just speed up things for white. So we are not going to waste time with that. We are just going to keep the threat. Uh, and now white needs to release the bishop. So this pawn is a problem at the moment. So how do we release it? We come back with the king. This is our only advantage. We have two free pieces to move while black is forced just to use the bishop, and because the bishop is kind of in a triangulation, needs always one more tempo to achieve the target, and so we are able to improve our position because of that. So the bishop comes back, and now it's time to move the bishop to h6. Of course, now black can check, forcing our king to go to f7, but when black comes back attacking the pawn, now I don't need to come back also because I can protect it from g7. And so the first idea of bringing the bishop to the other side was already achieved. So black needs to move again and, of course, tries to keep attacking our pawn. Now we need to free again our bishop. We are going to use the same technique. So we defend the pawn with our king. Now the bishop comes again, and now we improve our bishop again to f8. And this sounds a bit strange, but look how we are going to win it. The bishop checks our king, so forcing it to move away, and then attacks the pawn again. But now we are able to force this endgame into a winning pawn endgame. So we are going to offer our bishop and pawn to a winning endgame. Not easy, but shows that if you want to improve, we need to go far. If you wonder many times how great players like Carson and so on they outplay their opponents, it's because they keep playing and find these interesting maneuvers. So black now is forced to take our bishop, of course. The pawn takes back, the king takes the pawn, and we need to win this pawn end game. So the more we know, the better we are as players. The move here is king e8. So, of course, now black also plays some threats, advancing the pawns and trying to also promote to a queen. But as we are going to see, it's not going to be enough because, of course, it's going to advance the free pawn, the e5 pawn. Now we move the king to the queen side, so we keep approaching to the 8. The pawn now advanced to f4. Of course, we can't take it. Okay, we can take it. Otherwise, we are just helping black to have 2 pawns against one, and a promotion of the queen will be guaranteed. And now white sacrifice another pawn, playing a5, offering the pawn, and now we can't advance the pawn immediately, so we need to move to the side to c8, and black is going, of course, to advance the pawn. First takes in g in the g3 square, and now advance the pawn. And it looks like a draw, but no, because there is one simple detail. The unfortunate position of the king will allow white to promote first with check. So notice how it goes. So each side races the pawns, but now it's white to play and it's check. And this is a win. Let me just show you very fast how the queen can grab the pawns very fast. So check, the king moves, check again, the king moves, check again, and we are more than ready to control the promotion of the remaining pawn. The king tries to approach, but now I just advance the other pawn and it's time to quit. So as you can see, there is a lot going here before we move on. And there is another interesting moment, some moves behind, because over here we played king f6, and then the king came to d7, and then we sacrifice. But what if we sacrifice now? Yes, this is not enough. This is going to be a draw. But the idea from white, maybe white is not paying attention, was to think, okay, if they take the pawn back, I just attack the pawn protects, and the same zugzang position happens. And as we saw before, this is a win for white. Well, yes, in theory. But as many times happens in a game, black won't just allow white to have all the fun and simply takes the pawn. And this leaves us to another interesting position. Of course, white will take a second pawn, but now black is able to play this interesting and important bishop d4 that not only protects the c5 pawn as attacks the f2 pawn, which is lost. And over here, the engines give it favorably for white, but it's not enough for a win, because the idea is simple. White will try to advance the pawn and force the black king into a passive position. It's going to be so passive that the king can't move anymore. So we will need to rely just in moving our bishop. But on the other side, we still have 3 pawns against 2 on the king side, and we are going to use that coordination between the bishop and the threatening of advancing the pawns to keep the draw. Let's see this in action. So white will try to advance the a pawn, of course. There is the best first setup is to force black into a passive defense on with the king. So the king needs to come to control. Notice that now I can't advance a6 check, otherwise I lose the bishop. So the bishop goes to d8. And of course, now I take the f2 pawn. And if you notice, materially we are equal, but then comes the check and the king is forced to go to a7. Notice that if the king goes to the back rank, like for example b8, then we simply, white can advance the b6 pawn, and this is going to be a win. We can even sacrifice the bishop, because when it takes back, we have this intermediate move that delivers the check, forces the king, and now the king only can catch one of them and the other will promote. So as you can see here, without no doubts, black is forced to this passive position because as soon as the king moves, then the pawns will advance, and as you see, it's going to be a win for white. So this is a dead piece at the moment, but it's white to play again. Now, of course, white needs to defend the g3 pawn, so this is a logical move, and black just delivers a check. Notice that now if the king moves it away, we simply can force the position with f4, forcing white to take back. Otherwise, we are going to try to promote one pawn, which is not good for white. So we take the bishop. Again, white can take the bishop back, needs to go for the pawns, and so we get the draw in this interesting way. So after the check, going passive. Going passive is not also a progressing move, so we just keep waiting, and if the king comes back, we just deliver another check. Let's say, for example, it goes over here, we just go to e3 again, and so white can progress in this way. So over here, it's kind of the only possibility for white to keep forcing the play is to block it with the bishop. Of course, here we refuse the exchange, but now how can white force it? Because if the king goes too far, we can threat to take the bishop and then advancing the pawns. There are a lot of things going on over here. So the best move here for white is to go to d2, trying to wait some tempo. Now black needs to keep playing, of course. So attacking the g3 pawn again. And notice that we are not afraid of our weak pawn on c5, because if the black attack it, we can simply defend it with our bishop, because taking the bishop is just a lost position for white. Now it's black is going to win. So because really white can't force it anymore, we are facing just a draw over here. Notice that this surprise move also forced us to think a little bit. There is one last move to analysis that's on the beginning. As I told you, we are going to see this one. So we, instead of exchanging the rook, there is also another interesting position that comes from the possibility that black exchanges the rooks now. So we take back, and now the idea is black win a tempo by bringing the king sooner. Of course, we are going to take one pawn. It's not relevant because our double pawns are not making much difference at the moment. So the king comes to near the pawn faster. Of course, we are going to approach our king, but now the king has a strong position uh, where white can't progress. So now the technique is going to bring the bishop to the other side again. So a little detail, a little difference on the technique. Let's see this just for ending this one. We go to e1. Notice that now we have a stronger position because the f pawn is supporting our e pawn, which makes black bishop a bit dumber. Uh, it needs to move, but now we simply check the king. The king goes away, and now we can approach our king. Uh, of course, again, the bishop can't come to the 8 because the exchange will favor white. We simply take the pawn again and win this one. So the bishop is forced to go back. And now here the situation is going to be simple. We are going to bring the bishop to e7. So we are preparing a sacrifice in a similar way, but because we were forced to first remove the king from the defensive position, instead of doing from c3, we are going to do it from e7. Basically, a different approach, an interesting, another alternative to the study. So bishop comes to a defensive, interesting position. So here the sacrifice is not interesting because we want to, after placed black in zugzwang, if you remember. So we first move the king one time. That's the advantage of being able to move the two pieces, and black not being able to move back the king. So the king is forced to go back again, and now we simply sacrifice, it takes, and then we got the same zugzwang position that we saw, and it's a win for white. So several positions. It was a long study. As I told you on the beginning, it's like a crime investigation. We are going to many details. I hope you find it useful or at least enjoyable. And as always, I see you back in future studies. Bye bye.